The courtroom was hushed when the pastor, dressed in a crisp navy suit, suddenly rose, cutting off his own attorney mid-sentence. "Stop," he said, his voice cracking. "There's something I need to tell this court." What came next had the entire gallery gasping and reporters scrambling for their phones. Backhand index pointing right before we reveal the shocking confession that turned this trial upside down. Tap subscribe and turn on the bell, so you never miss a single real-life courtroom twist like this one. The courtroom's air felt heavy enough to taste. Ceiling fans turned lazily above rows of tense spectators, and the software of cameras whispered beneath the buzz of fluorescent lights. At the defense table, Pastor Nathaniel Cross adjusted the cuffs of his navy suit. His attorney leaned close, murmuring a strategy for the next cross-examination, but Nathaniel's eyes were locked on the jurors, 12 strangers who held the power to end or salvage everything he had built. The trial of state versus Nathaniel Cross had already stretched for 10 grueling days. To his congregation back in Cedar Ridge, Texas, he was the beloved shepherd of Grace Revival Tabernacle, a man whose Sunday sermons could make skeptics weep. To prosecutors, he was a fraud artist accused of siphoning millions from a church-funded youth housing project and laundering it through a maze of shell charities. To the national press, he was the pastor with 2 lives, a symbol of charisma turned corruption. The morning's testimony had been routine until the judge called a recess. Reporters shuffled papers, the gallery rustled, and then, without warning, Nathaniel stood. His chair screeched against the polished floor. He lifted a trembling hand. "Stop," he said, his voice cracking but clear enough to cut through every side conversation. His attorney froze mid-sentence. The bailiff tensed. Even the judge's gavel paused in mid-air. "I need to tell this court the truth," Nathaniel said, his voice rising like an unexpected hymn. "Not the truth I've rehearsed. The real one." A stunned silence filled the room. His lawyer whispered harshly, "Sit down, Nathaniel." But he didn't. The jurors leaned forward as Nathaniel stepped into the open well of the courtroom. "For months I have hidden what I am," he began. "I cannot carry it any longer." The prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Carla Ruiz, straightened behind her lectern. "Your Honor," she began, but the judge raised a single palm, eyes narrowing. "Let him speak," Judge Martha Keene said, her voice a blend of curiosity and steel. Nathaniel inhaled deeply. "What you've heard so far, yes, I diverted funds. But that is only the surface. I led a double life. One that began long before Cedar Ridge knew my name." Gasps broke from the gallery. A local reporter's camera shutter clicked wildly. "I wasn't just a pastor," he continued. "I was also Gabriel Cross, organizer for the Black Lantern Collective." Heads snapped toward each other. The Black Lantern was a shadowy activist network rumored to hack financial institutions that profited from predatory lending. For years, federal agents whispered about its elusive leader known only as Gabriel. And now the man in the navy suit claimed to be him. Nathaniel's confession spilled like a dam bursting. Years earlier, he said, he'd witnessed entire neighborhoods gutted by fraudulent subprime loans. He funneled church donations into hidden accounts not for personal wealth but to bankroll covert operations, paying off whistleblowers, funding encrypted servers, exposing banks that preyed on the poor. But his voice cracked again. "Somewhere along the way," he admitted, "I lost sight of God and of myself. I lied to my wife, my children, my congregation. I told myself I was serving a higher justice. But the truth is I liked the power. I liked the secrecy." The courtroom felt electric. Jurors exchanged looks of shock and disbelief. A woman in the gallery covered her mouth to muffle a sob. Prosecutor Ruiz recovered first. "Mr. Cross," she said, emphasizing the name, "are you saying you embezzled the church's money to commit federal cybercrimes?" Nathaniel met her gaze. "I'm saying I broke the law in the name of justice, and I am prepared to face whatever sentence this court deems fit." His attorney slumped into his chair, defeated. Judge Keene's voice was measured but intense. "Mr. Cross, do you understand the gravity of this statement? You are waiving your right to counsel mid-trial and confessing to crimes beyond the scope of this indictment." "Yes, Your Honor," Reporters in the back dashed for the door to file breaking alerts. Phones buzzed. Social feeds exploded. Outside, thunder rolled though the sky was clear, as if the weather itself responded. News vans clustered along Cedar Ridge's courthouse square. Parishioners from Grace Revival, some tearful, some defiant, pressed against police barriers, watching updates on live streams. Inside, Ruiz requested an immediate recess to confer with federal authorities. The judge granted it, and the courtroom emptied into a buzz of whispers. In the hallway, former congregants argued with journalists. "He was our shepherd," an elderly woman said through tears. "If what he says is true, he did it for us." Others weren't so forgiving. "He's a criminal hiding behind scripture," a younger man spat. When court resumed the next morning, the atmosphere had shifted from a state fraud trial to something closer to a national security hearing. Federal agents in dark suits occupied the back row. The FBI had joined the investigation overnight. Ruiz approached the bench. "Your Honor, the state requests to expand the charges to include computer intrusion, interstate wire fraud, and money laundering. The defendant's own confession warrants federal coordination." Judge Keene nodded gravely. "So ordered." The defense offered no objection. Nathaniel only clasped his hands and bowed his head. Testimony took a new direction. Cyberforensics experts described encrypted networks traced to an alias, Gabriel Cross. Evidence from seized laptops matched voice recordings from Black Lantern broadcasts. One agent detailed a daring breach that revealed illegal predatory loan portfolios, an operation that had embarrassed several major banks. Every revelation seemed to confirm Nathaniel's story. But Ruiz pressed further, grilling him on cross-examination. "You call it justice. Isn't it true you also transferred over $600,000 into a private account in Belize?" Nathaniel looked down. "Yes, that was for me. Not for the poor. Not for justice. For you." A beat of silence. "For me," he repeated. The courtroom stayed riveted as Ruiz forced him to confront each contradiction. Parishioners who once defended him now shook their heads in the gallery. The double life wasn't just righteous rebellion. It was also greed, ego, and betrayal. Closing arguments stretched into evening. Ruiz addressed the jury with unflinching focus. "The defendant wants you to believe he's a hero who broke the law for noble reasons. But heroism is not laundering money. It is not deceiving those who trusted you most. No cause, no matter how poetic, places anyone above the law." Nathaniel's defense was a quiet plea for context. "Judge him by the totality of his life," his attorney said. "Yes, he broke laws, but he also exposed corruption and sheltered victims of financial abuse. Punish him, but see the man as more than the sum of his crimes." The jury deliberated late into the night. Spectators camped on courthouse steps, trading theories. Social media erupted with hashtag #PastorDoubleLife, memes of a Bible split down the spine. Near midnight, the jury returned. The foreperson's voice was steady. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Nathaniel Cross, guilty on all counts." Gasps swept the room. Nathaniel closed his eyes, a faint exhale the only sign of emotion. His wife wept quietly in the front row. Judge Keene pronounced sentence a week later, 18 years in federal prison. Before leading him away, she addressed the packed courtroom. "Mr. Cross, you cloaked deception in faith and called it justice. Yet, in confessing, you offered this court and your community a rare truth. May that truth serve as your first step toward redemption." Outside, cameras flashed like lightning. Supporters and critics shouted over each other. Some hailed him as a vigilante hero who exposed corrupt banks. Others condemned him as a hypocrite who betrayed the very gospel he preached. As marshals guided him down the courthouse steps, Nathaniel looked up at the crowd, at the faces of people he had inspired and betrayed. "Hold your leaders accountable," he said softly. "Even the ones you love." Then he disappeared into the waiting transport van. Grace Revival Tabernacle held service the next Sunday. The pews were full but hushed. In the front row sat a Bible with Nathaniel's name engraved in fading gold. The new interim pastor opened to the Gospel of John and read aloud, The truth will set you free. For Cedar Ridge, the saga became legend. The day a pastor pulled off his own mask in open court, shocking a nation with the revelation that righteousness and wrongdoing can dwell in the same soul. And for every viewer replaying the viral clips online, the message lingered long after the headlines faded. Power corrupts, even the power of faith, unless tempered by accountability. If you think stories like this deserves to be told, then subscribe.